All quiet in the court. Make way for Lord Majka the Warm, Lord Dunny the Brave, and Lord Parthy the Wise. I am the prince and the host that was promised. Maniac, this is What's Trainwreck Watching, House of the Dragon, Season 2, Episode 4 recap. Gents, this is why you put your dragon boots on in the morning. This is why you take your moon tea at night. This episode delivered, gents.
Delivered, yeah, and all the hype that we had before this season started. We knew this episode was going to be a big one, and I don't know about y'all, but I was on the edge of my seat for a full hour that whole time. It was great TV, great prestige television. You can't ask for much more.
Yeah, the television, the cinematography. I know we talked about some of the dragon scenes from last week. Obviously, just got completely outdid by episode 4. Yeah, the attention to detail in this episode was awesome. We're going to get into all of it. So, I'll point out some things there. And then just Damon being on a basically his own Rogers ayahuasca trip during training camp throughout this whole thing is just insane.
Yeah, this was a 2-on-1 handicap match that I don't think even Paul Triple H Levesque could have booked even more perfectly. It was epic. There were consequences. We knew people were going to die. We knew there was going to be blood, fire and blood, just like the words of House Targaryen lived up to their names in this particular episode.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, they were throwing punches left and right, and I'm just talking about the dragons. But let's get into it. Obviously, a huge battle. Battles always seem to deliver in the Game of Thrones universe. This was no different. So we're going to get in and review the episode. But, gents, the proof is kind of already in the pudding here. We're seeing the highest rated episodes in the Game of Thrones, verse. So I'm going to cue you guys up with a question right now. And this is a knee-jerk reaction. Is this a top 5 episode in the Game of Thrones universe?
I think
thus far, yes.
Yeah, I would say thus far, recency bias obviously helping a little bit here, but I think I can confidently say yes. Like, there was a 3-minute stretch during that episode last night where I think my mouth was open, just watching, observing, and surprised by it all.
Yeah, I think it's tough to argue. I think it was one of the hands down the best. Everything we got, everything we were waiting for. I'm with you guys.
I like Hard Home. I like Battle of the Bastards. I like Reigns of Castamere here. I would actually replace the Winds of Winter with the Watchers on the Wall. I thought the Watchers on the Wall, the Battle at the Wall was a lot better than the Winds of Winter. I get it. We got some dragons in the Winds of Winter. See, the thing is, by Winds of Winter, we were like 6 years starving of dragons. We've had a lot of dragon action so far. For it to deliver on this level, yeah, I think was really an indicator, obviously, of some delivery, and I'm not talking DiGiorno. So with that said, this episode did deliver a number way. We're going to throw it in a neutral real quick, and we're going to talk the most important storyline, and that is that Alan is back. So obviously, given the implications of what happens in this episode, we get a Rhaenys-Alan bonding moment. Kind of like, it's like, hey, if you didn't pick up that this guy's the bastard son of Lord Corlys in the first episode, here's like the idiot, like for dummies guide of what's going on. Yeah. That was basically it. Also me. Like, if I didn't have all these YouTube reviews, that would have definitely been, the information. But what did you guys think of this scene? And obviously at this point, I mean, you got to be looking at Alan odds as the Lord of Driftmark. Like, what? Pick him at best. He might be a money line favorite, Micah.
I disappeared for a second. Yeah, money line favorite. Minus 150 even, I'd go with. Alan's held in high regard right now with Corlys and Rhaenys. I mean, it's crazy. Like you said, I would not have known this. If you didn't bring it up a couple weeks ago, this would have been my eye-opening moment for Alan. But it feels like he's about to get that mega push. Like, he's about to be a big-time player in the second half of this season. And they're going to need all the help they can get there at Driftmark. So it's a good time to kind of get him back in the fold. He seems extremely competent. Seems like maybe someone Corlys will be able to trust or trusts already. Gonna need that going forward. But I was interested to see that conversation between him and Rhaenys, and then Rhaenys and Corlys. I don't know about you, Dunny.
Yeah, it was for such a short scene, it was pretty powerful and just not at all like what we saw with Catelyn Stark towards Jon Snow in Game of Thrones. This was there's really, it was strange. There's really no other way to put it. It was like, I think if Corlys didn't interrupt her, like, how was this interaction going to go? She was about to go off about how beautiful his mother must have been, and she was kind of just admiring him and taking it all in. And, she seemed surprised. He was obviously weirded out and shocked a little bit. But yes, I'm with you, Maniac. I don't think if I had done any digging, this would have been the moment that I found out, even though I had a little bit of a hunch. And then the show laid it out for us.
That's a great point, too, is that Catelyn Stark was kind of had her shield up. And so she was like, oh, a bastard son. Like, that's not good for, like, the lineage and the honor or whatever. Whereas you have Rhaenys, who doesn't really give a shit about anybody because she, like, is the queen that never was. And she's just like, wow, your mom must have been, like, beautiful. Like, wow.
Yeah.
What do you think about the Alan screen time and push?
As long as Rhaenyra has younger sons that are named Valerian, or as long as Corlys still has granddaughters, I don't know that I put Alan as the Lord of Driftmark heir, but if he's a bastard son of Blood of Old Valyria, that means he's technically a dragon seed. And we've already had a little exposition on the fact that, bastard sons of Targaryens or maybe even Valerians are considered, dragon seeds. They carry the blood of Old Valyria, which means they could, recruit a dragon if they wanted to, or if they were so offered. And, that little seed, that was, no pun intended, that little seed with the guy in the tavern talking about how he was the bastard son of King Jacaerys, or the grandfather, or whoever it was. That was a little bit setting up for, the bastard sons of the Targaryens and the Valerians are going to play a part in the wars to come, shall we say. So I don't think it's so much a question of heirs and, who's getting Driftmark. I think it's going to be setting up for something bigger.
Okay. Yeah. They've definitely, like, it's crazy because you obviously have this huge picture, Team Black versus Team Green, but they continue to plant, for lack of a better term, all these seeds all over the realm, telling you that there's storylines going on and there are bigger things at play. Speaking of bigger things at play, we get is this the first time we've heard Cole referred to as Kingmaker in the series? Because that's pretty big in the Fire and Blood verse, correct?
So,
okay.
Yeah.
That was pretty big. And just when you think Cole's going to get all the attention, Lord Darkland puts him in an absolute bag in this scene. Oh, my goodness. There is nothing like being a champ when you're getting beheaded, like talking your shit. Like when you're going down in this universe and you talk your shit, that's the ultimate, like, you lived a fucking life because you're not begging for like more time. You're not like trying to explain yourself or whatever. You're just like, fuck it. The road ran its like the road ran its way, and that's how it happened. But this was what'd you think of this?
Was the most defiant way that someone has gone out since Lady Olenna said, "Tell Cersei I wanted her to know it was me." Lord Darkland,
Lord Darkland had great vibes for sure, spitting on him, everything. Cole obviously with the slash, no Theon Greyjoy issues, like when he turned on the Starks at Winterfell there. But yeah, Cole running up the thing as well. So this was basically like what? This is, the equivalent of when you're playing like a game and you got to like get your experience points up to do like a special move. Like this was like kind of running Cole's like points up so he could do the special move at Rook's Rest, clearly, right? Like that was the build up to that battle. Thoughts on this scene or anything on this sequence before we kind of go on? But I just thought it was awesome. I mean, Lord Darkland was balling in this scene. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about this, love him, hate him, whether, you have the same sentiment as this guy did right before he got his head cut off and you kind of think Cole's a fraud. He's carrying this, whatever he's doing and, being the hand of the king and making all these moves. He's doing it well, whether, we believe in him or think it's fraudulent or don't like that he's doing this well. I think ultimately he's doing a pretty good job at it. And, it all leads up to the battle where he didn't do such a bad job there either. It just kind of turned into chaos once all the dragons got involved.
We're definitely going to get into the Rook's Rest. We're going to get into the X's and O's of Rook's Rest for sure, because it definitely deserves it. But with that said, real quick, not exactly an X's and O's situation for how it typically is in King's Landing, but an interesting situation with the council. You have Larys at the table now. He's sitting on the one side by himself. Everyone else is on the other side. I guess that's kind of to show they're maybe a little bit worried, a little bit against him. But yeah, to me, this was like you had Lord Larys just like sipping his tea. You had the Targaryen bros like literally grabbing at each other's hair essentially. And then you had the lords on the other side of the table just kind of like trying to survive and trying to do their part to like kind of appease the king essentially. Did you guys take anything else away from the scene before we get into the Valyrian back and forth?
Well, I think the most interesting thing to me was with Aegon talking, even when he spoke to Alicent a little bit about the history books and learning from Viserys and what he was doing and everything else. Because there was a lot of Viserys's fingerprints all over this episode, and also just his relationship with Daemon too. We saw Aemon a couple weeks ago as like, Daemon, you know, he's my hero, he's my idol, whatever else. He was like honored that Daemon would try to kill him and everything else. And you see this dynamic in the throne room where Aemon in this Daemon role is getting to kind of do what Daemon would have wanted to do, right? Go in, fire and brimstone, take all these places out and everything else, where Viserys had the power. And on this other way, Aegon would love to join him, clearly. Aegon's all about this war, and everybody else has to kind of calm him down and tell him to use that restraint, like Otto told him a couple weeks ago. Like, where's your grace? Where's your I can't remember, the poise or whatever the word he was using in that conversation. And then touching on a little bit with Rhaenyra too, with her counsel, she showed that restraint this whole time too. So it's kind of like all the little pieces of Viserys kind of touching through, and that dynamic was the interesting thing to me with Aegon in this council, because he clearly he doesn't have it in control. Like, we've talked about these councils being a thing, and now we're at the point where Aegon's, you know, anger and all this and whatever he's had going on, his ruthlessness and his spontaneity, they're kind of just like, all right, yeah, whatever, we'll figure it out on our own here.
Yeah, he's basically a figurehead, and he doesn't like it. He doesn't like being ignored. He doesn't like the fact that Aemon seems to be a little bit more strategic than he is, and they've been plotting this war behind his back. And he's just like, hey, he's becoming Joffrey, you know, saying, he literally says to his mother, I'm the king. And you hear, you know, Lord Tywin's quote in your head as soon as he says that. Meanwhile, Alicent is basically just trying to make sense of everything that's gone on, whether it's trying to erase her indiscretions with Cole, or searching the history books for, you know, a mention of the Song of Ice and Fire to try and make sense of what Rhaenyra told her. So, and she's pretty much resigned herself to the fact, just like Rhaenyra now has, that, yeah, war's inevitable. Meanwhile, Aegon is just trying to make himself useful, and Aemon's calling him out on, you know, whoring around with his lick spittles and, holding court with all his buddies and friends, just getting drunk. And of course, that little run-in at the brothel, I don't think Aemon forgot that, and we're going to see the consequences of that later, I think.
Oh, dude, Aemon was dropping the most ridiculous verbiage in that series of Valyrian. I had to look up about like 4 to 6 words, like sobriquet or whatever, which is just nickname. Yeah. Like, why don't you just say nickname, Aemon? Like, you fucking like showing off. Guy had like a dunk, and he's doing an off the backboard alley-oop to himself. But yeah, I thought it was great.
He's showing up Aegon by talking to him in High Valyrian, and he knows Aegon isn't as fluent.
Yeah, he knows that he kind of understands it, but he also can't talk it. It was almost like the perfect talking down to give him, for sure. But yes, so that's the King's Landing. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yep.
No, just real quick. I loved how no one else at the table seemingly knew what they were saying, but they knew that Aemon
was vibe.
Absolutely getting the best of him, because he was like, any thoughts on this? And they all just kind of turned, even though they didn't know what he said. They were like, oh shit, what's going to happen now?
Yep. And then obviously we go from one council to another. Again, we had a very breakneck pace in this episode for the first 40 minutes as far as locations and where we were going. We go back to the Black Council, where again, it's kind of where they left off last week, right? You got the lords bickering, which is understandable. And then you got, and by the way, the main guy bickering, like I didn't even know his name, so I had to look it up. He's just a knight from Dragonstone. He's not even like a lord or something. He's talking this big game. It's kind of crazy. That's why I'm glad that my boy Jace showed out for his boo, made sure that things were on the record. The only reason we know any of this is because of Baela's efforts. But what do you think? I mean, are both of these councils like kind of wiser than the leaders leading them, or is it maybe a little bit you're seeing the diligence on Rhaenyra's side and you're seeing the lack of diligence and the the immaturity on Aegon's? Is that the vibe they're going for here with these councils? There, because this show loves themes, so it was definitely featuring the one council versus the other. I felt in this episode,
there's definitely a dichotomy and an irony between the two councils. You have the Green Council, who wants nothing, who just basically pushes Aegon aside. It's like, yeah, whatever, we're going to do our thing. And the Black Council is basically like, where's our leader? Where's the person that's supposed to be leading this? One council's looking for a leader, and the other council couldn't care less about their figurehead leader.
That's a great point. And that's perfectly said. And just the fact that Rhaenyra just feels like she is in control of the situation and can make decisions on her own, right? Like if Aegon went off and did something on like similar, flying to Dragonstone or anything like that, he would have been met and reprimanded immediately. It wasn't like everybody was like, why would you do such a thing? Rhaenyra explained herself, was like, listen, like, this is what I felt like I had to do. I was going to do it, whatever else. And they kind of all fell in, like, they had some questions, but kind of all fell in line. I don't think that it's the same. So it's a great point, Mike, like just where these two councils are at with their leaders.
Yeah, and I will say we were talking about the council scene, so I don't even know his name. And that was how I was for Thrones for the first 3 to 4 seasons. Like, it takes some time with some of these names for sure. But Rhaenyra's personal guard, her dad was at Duskendale or something, right? And got beheaded or killed by Kristen Cole. And they're talking about that. It almost felt like, they kind of had to like get that out of the way, like by the last thing. They're like, oh, by the way, like your dad died. Like, like it just felt so abrupt. There was no build. And maybe that was to show like the terrible war. But, the funny thing is I was thinking about it. Last week we saw like, Parent Trap, like switcheroo or whatever. Or no, I'm sorry. Like the under disguise as the nun going into the sept. And then, this guy's got to be a little bit pissed, even though it was to prevent a war, that like he was basically off like gallivanting in like King's Landing while his dad died. But he didn't really show it that much, I thought.
Yeah,
he was upset.
No one else
he was
in the
upset.
council really reacted either. They were just like, yeah, your father, he stuck to his word and stuck to his guns. And then he was like, well, what happened? They're like, he lost his head for it. And then it was just kind of, all right, move on.
It was absolutely like the guy wasn't a priority. So I don't know. Again, I think it's almost like, Micah, we were talking with the boys, not any major problems with any shows, but every so often you get a glaring hole where it's like maybe, that guy could have used like 3 minutes in episode 2 to be like, oh, I've been away from my family for so long, yada, yada, or something like that. I think it would have been a little bit more emotionally tying. Fell very flat when it was the dad dying. But something that didn't fall flat is, and you want to talk about a battle. Let's talk about what's going on in the head of Daemon right now. I think this meme just about puts it perfectly. He's living in a haunted house where he doesn't even know who he's against. But with that said, what did you guys, I'll kick this off on this discussion because I'm curious what you guys think at this point. When this started, I was like, get the fuck out of Harrenhal and like get me to a battle or like get me to something where Daemon's actually getting some action. Now, the further he is into it, I actually want to see him like wandering around the halls for like 15 to 20 minutes, tripping out like he's on acid. It's amazing. It's a great battle that Daemon's fighting right now. Did anybody else think the person he was chasing was going to be Viserys?
No, it looked like Aemon
until he got closer.
Yeah.
I was a little confused. I didn't know who it was at first. I thought, just like this meme that we're showing here, I just thought he was following himself, and then it was kind of some version of himself, but also Aemon.
Some crazy like Luke Skywalker Star Wars thing going on there.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too. Yeah, bro. Luigi's Mansion is the best way to put it. Bro is just losing his mind right now, and that
this place is strong with the dark side of the Force. The main of evil is.
When your only real interaction with a human is with a witch, it's usually not ideal.
I mean, Damon's just trying to get stuff organized in the Riverlands, and all these figureheads or the real lords, aren't in any condition to lead anybody. He's just trying to, rally the troops, and he's just too distracted with the literal ghosts from his past. His late wife, Aemond, and Rhaenyra, young Rhaenyra, that he had to, vie for the, the inheritance of the throne. So he's really dealing with a lot of it makes him look like a lot more of a complex character than just this emotionless badass who just waylays anybody that's in his way. He's really having to face all the things that he's done in the past and all the thoughts that he's had.
Yeah, and then the Alice Rivers, I believe, is the bastard who he came across in the kitchen there. Just her just knowing every single thing about him, and him not really knowing if she's psychic or if she's just been kind of creeping along and just knows that he came in on the dragon to take over the castle. But her just kind of reading him like a book, and just the expressions on his face that he's making in the scene were perfect. She was like, he's like, am I intrigued by this? Am I a little turned on? Should I be scared? Like what's happening right now?
Yeah, whether it's, Melisandre having something work with like the, the Renly thing, surprise magic in this universe when it works or comes out of nowhere is the best. And that's why this character is great, like you said. Now I want to flash this back real quick because we're talking about, the Thrones verse. If you remember, there was an awesome character in season 2 of Game of Thrones, Quaithe or whatever, in the Free Cities, and Jorah was going to her and like trying to find out who was attacking Daenerys, and she met with him like 2 or 3 times, and the final time she met with him, she just goes, "Will you betray her again, Jorah?" The end, all like indicating that she knew like he had betrayed her and all that stuff. And there's kind of that mysticism going on with this character, like you said, Dunny, where she kind of knows everything that's going on about him, and it kind of makes you think there's going to be a bigger picture. Now, I mean, what you want to talk about live odds? I don't know how much I want to get into this with Partham because I know he knows a little detail, but I got to think that Damon's odds of ever leaving the Riverlands / Harrenhal are going down by like the minute here.
Yeah. I'd say,
did I see next episode doing some woodwork at Harrenhal? I mean, this guy's lost his brain.
He's gonna start collecting a W-2 from Harrenhal. Dude. He's just becoming a worker at the castle. It looks like,
dude. Absolutely. All right. Well, with that said, the moment has arrived. If you followed this long, thank you very much for tailing along with us. It has been a battle, and it was no different at Rook's Rest, which we'll get down to on the other side of this break.
Batavia Down is more, lots more.
Folks, you need action, you need excitement, go to Batavia Downs, the region's premier entertainment destination. Now, a lot of people were saying, Rook's Rest wasn't Westeros's premier destination. They were surprised that everyone wasn't going after Harrenhal and everything like that. With that said, we get to Rook's Rest, and the first thing is that Cole goes in an immediate daytime charge. Did anybody think that he had like an actual plan at this point, or did anyone know he had a plan at this point?
I didn't think so or no. So I just thought he was got a little too high and on being the king's hand and kind of making the right choice just by running into the woods last episode. I thought he was just high off that and was kind of going in balls blazing.
It didn't seem like a plan to me. It seems like, I don't know, like what is the who's privy to this plan? Is it just him and Aemond, and they're just
I think it was
know?
really just him and Aemond, and then basically he told those 2 archers to just fire flaming arrows in the air for no reason. Like they didn't know what they were doing.
He's on to something where it was like he said, "Oh, it'll be a surprise during the day," and yes, it was. And I think the brother says yes because it's madness, but that's pretty much how they've operated in the field for 2-3 episodes now, is just chaos and madness and using that to their advantage. So I don't know, maybe our guy Cole is just onto something here.
Well, maybe they took the other castles so easily. I mean, they willingly surrendered. True. And once they had big enough hosts, they got that third castle sieged out. And maybe Cole was just like, this shit is easy. Why don't you just take all of them one by one? Rhaenyra's not sending any dragons at ice. Well, she sent a scout dragon, and that certainly gave him a little bit of a pause and a scare, but he wasn't shaken by it. He wasn't letting anybody know it. They were going under the cover of the trees, and they had the trees right next to Rook's Rest that they could set up camp in and, lay siege and start trying to take it whenever they wanted.
So Rook's Rest is just the heat check castle where he was just
it's the last black stronghold on the mainland of the Crown Lands that they could land from Dragonstone if they had any kind of army to raise.
I also loved how Aemond was trying to tell Aegon that it was like the last, piece of the map on land where they could cut off Dragonstone, and Aegon just didn't listen to it at all, and just like a little kid, he's like, "No, let's go back to Harrenhal. I want Harrenhal."
Yeah. The little kid would say, I want the big castle. Let's get the big castle back.
Yeah, it was definitely meant to be like a little kid. That was unfortunate for Aegon. But obviously, yeah. So, I mean, I think there was the one part plan, like you said, that the council knew about, maybe the generals knew about, that they wanted it for strategic reasoning. The Vhagar plan had to be completely between Cole and Aemond to me, for sure.
Well, you needed a few soldiers to make those signals, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I'm saying like Cole just had literally 2 like archers being like, when I tell you to fire flaming arrows in the air, just like fucking do it. Because there's there's a legit battle charge going on, and these guys are like, okay, our job is to just stand here and fire in the air mindlessly, they weren't as and just to be clear, that is a credit to Cole as a leader. They have the respect that they would do that. So obviously, good on them. But with that said, no good on our false king, real king, depending on where you lean. Aegon, obviously, whether his mom talked him into it, the rest play was to do nothing. obviously, but instead rides him into battle. Sunfire. First off, I think this is the first real screen time we're getting with Sunfire, right? An amazing moment between Aegon and Sunfire, kind of like a drunken owner and his dog, like just hanging out real quick.
I was gonna say that they need to get dragons to have those breathalyzers that start your car, and Aegon should have one of those on Sunfire, because I also love the scene of the just zoom in of his face when he's first riding into battle. He just looks hammered on the back of a dragon.
He definitely looks hammered on the back of a dragon, which is unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, the idea that these guys were just riding dragons into, just unbelievable. But Parthy, give me your breakdown as we enter. We got obviously Sunfire storming into battle against Rhaenys, who's obviously dominating, the infantry.
Well, I actually have to give a little, begrudging credit again to Kristen Cole. As much as we hate him as a person, he is a bit of a good strategist. Once he sees the king is going into battle for himself, and this is not part of the plan, he sort of pulls a bit of an audible, and he kind of rallies the troops by trying to inspire them by saying, "Your king is here, go fight for him." So, he certainly knows how to think on his feet, even when everything's not going according to plan. And, a little bit curious that Aemond wouldn't immediately join him in the battle. He's staying behind with Vhagar for a few seconds to see how this plays out.
Absolutely. So then obviously we get a battle, and it's kind of chaotic because you get first off, it's not chaotic. Let me talk about it. It's fucking brutal because these dragons, I thought a Dance of Dragons, like, ooh, they were going to do a little like fire at each other, a little fire here, a little fire there. Meleys comes in clawing at Sunfire's sternums. Like, was I the only one like jaw dropped at those shots?
This is when the mouth was open here when I was watching. I feel like in Game of Thrones we didn't see any of like this. I didn't even know this was a tactic for the dragons. I didn't know their talons were.
We were only getting dragon missionary in Game of Thrones. I'm convinced now. It was all very basic. It was just fly in, blast it with fire, and then fly out. Like, no, these dragons were showing you like the Sun Tzu art of war of dragon fighting. Those claws were fucking unbelievable. And then you have the boiling blood. Are you kidding me?
Yes,
raining down on the soldiers.
Yeah.
Like, that's the worst way to go. It's not like, he got like he fell to like 8 honorable Blackwood on the field of battle. No, Grandpa fell because, the king's dragon started bleeding on him and it burned his skin off on the battle while he screamed in terror.
When the dragons start, fighting close quarters, to use a Top Gun reference, this is them switching from missiles to guns, essentially. And they will tear each other apart. It's a little too close to use the fire from your mouth, so you're just going to fight tooth and claw and just tear at each other. At the end of the day, these are sharp-toothed predators.
Well, does the fire do anything to I feel like, because we know that the Targaryens and with their fire and everything else, like, is the fire even affecting the rider or the dragon in that fight?
I would say
it more like a
the rider
distraction?
a lot more than the dragon.
Yeah.
In any case. The fire is more just a distraction to the dragons because, dragons don't burn is what they said.
Yeah.
Except for the fall of Old Valyria when all these volcanoes just, erupted all at once and made it so hot that even dragons fell from the sky. It would have to get super like the surface of the sun hot to affect a dragon like that. So I think the fire is just meant to be a distraction between the dragons and B, a way to try to, take the riders out of the equation.
And obviously, all of a sudden, Aegon, is happy to see his brother. Next thing you know, he's catching, 50,000 degrees Kelvin to the face. That was unbelievable. The thank the gods. I'm glad this one got it. The thank the gods was so joyous when he said it right before he got blasted. It was fucking hysterical. It was the funniest thing this character's done, which has been a lot of funny things, like being the like drunken king and just like obviously a slob. But yeah, it was perfectly done. And then I think, carrying on to what you guys said, I don't think dragons can be affected their core of like the fire, but Sunfire looked like small enough that when the wing was on fire, it was like a massive issue because like I think they almost crashed to the ground the first time, right?
Yeah, I think the wings are a bit of a vulnerability, that thin layer of skin. You could probably burn that off as opposed to their scaly bodies.
I think too in that scene where Aegon tried to use the fire and Rhaenys kind of, the smarter dragon rider was like, no, we're going to attack here. I think it was just kind of another showing of Aegon's minimal Valerian, and
Yes.
I think all he could think of when he was up there was in his drunken state was just Dracarys. He was like, all right, well, we're up here, I'm on a dragon, let's do the whole fire thing, and it just wasn't effective at all. To make a weird parallel here to Aegon, I thought it was a great Aegon episode. I think the acting was awesome, even though he was acting like a toddler, like I was saying, and maybe you don't like the character. But it reminded me a little bit of AJ Soprano from The Sopranos, where you're like, this kid sucks. He's so annoying, but it's great acting, and for some reason, like you're just enjoying while you're watching it. In this episode, Aegon reminded me of AJ Soprano. I thought it was a lot of the scenes, and even like you said, when he was like, "Thank God," like it was comedic relief, but also good acting at the same time. I don't know. I thought it was a good Aegon episode.
A great point too, because AJ Soprano so often fell on his face when he tried to do anything that was like replicating his dad or anything with like, crime activity. And this is a perfect example too. You're right.
Well,
Aegon's getting.
Let's talk about Aemon in this particular maneuver. Let's have the discussion. Did Aemon purposely fire to hurt Aegon? Was this payback for the brothel scene?
I think Aemon is been hoping for Aegon's demise for a while now. So yeah, I think it's on purpose.
Okay, this is the first time I've thought of this take, and it's very elaborate, so bear with me. But I think Aemon views him and Vhagar as like a queen on a chessboard. And bottom line, he just didn't respect Aegon that much. Like, he didn't think he was really a big player. It's like, so he maybe thought he was like a knight or like a rook. So the fact that he could trade both of them in the moment, I think that was what ultimately cued him to be like, this is like a great trade for us. Like, I'm still here and they're both like gone. Like, I don't know if he actually thought like, I want to kill my brother and become king. I don't think that actual thought happened. I think it may have been in the back of his brain, but it was subconscious. Like, I don't think it actually happened. But that's my view on it, is that Aemon views himself as this big power of all that. They didn't give a fuck. Dracarys right on their ass. You even saw Vhagar had such a fucking Dracarys that she warms up with like the fireball for like 3 seconds. Like, that shit's insane.
Yeah, it's a flex.
Yeah, it was
I think ultimately Aemon took the opportunity because he could just chalk it up to collateral damage. Whatever his motivations were, he could have an excuse for it.
And Aegon's not supposed to be there. Right. Like, that's the thing. Is like he's the one who's fucking everything up.
Dummy. We told you.
Did you guys notice? I meant to mention this earlier when we were talking about King's Landing. Did you guys pick up on the little foreshadowing with Alicent dropping the dragon figurine at the very beginning of the episode?
Good call.
I thought that was a callback to when Viserys
it was a double.
The little dragon figurine and broke it.
It was literally a double. It was a callback to things aren't like she had with Viserys, and then it was a forward to the eventual drag deck. Crazy. That's the Game of Thrones verse at its best. Seriously. That's the
detail that I was talking about at the beginning. That I was like, that scene and a couple others where I was like, wow, that was beautifully done.
This is like, I've had so much fun doing this show, have enjoyed the first 4 episodes, breaking them down with you boys. It's like, I wish I could stop right now. What a great battle at Rook's Rest. Like, Aegon got, like, all was all.
Yep.
Yep. Vhagar wasn't done, and neither was
Fucking
Rhaenys.
Vhagar, Parthy.
She could have
fucking Vhagar. Yeah, what'd you think about that samurai like turn around to like what? So the idea I guess they were trying to portray is that she was kind of leaving Rook's Rest behind. She hadn't finished the job. Vhagar could have like annihilated everybody, etc. And she was kind of turning around to kind of try and even the odds. One last stand. Was that the vibe they were going for?
I think at the end of the day, Rhaenys, even though she was justified in not starting the war in the Dragon Pit when she could have burned all the greens right there, I think there's a part of her that feels guilty that she didn't, because she could have ended it all. Even though it wasn't, like she said, her war to start, it could have been her war to end before it started. So I think she felt an obligation to keep fighting and try to take Vhagar and Aemon out of the equation and leave Rhaenyra and her son basically out of the fighting completely, because she could have finished the job right there.
Yeah, I think it was almost maybe not wanting to come back home empty-handed. Like, she kind of obviously, as far as she knows, she thinks that the king's taken out at that point, but I think just her and how prideful she is, and she kind of sent herself on that mission. I think she she just wanted to do more, and obviously, bit off a little more than she could chew, and just a terrible fate, but kind of going out in an honorable way at least.
I should have known that the death was coming, because when she said she was gonna fly out on Maylease, like in the council, like that was like a Tiger Woods like uppercut fist pump from me. Like I was I was fucking pumped. Like I was like, all right. Like I should have known something bad was coming. And then, yeah, I mean, the one thing I'll say is that, they kind of gave Vhagar. Now I get it when he got Lucerys, but they definitely gave Vhagar a little bit of like T-Rex syndrome from Jurassic Park. Like when they need a T-Rex to be hidden, it's all like quiet and not making any noise or any disruption. When they want to tell you it's like 5 miles away, they got like the moving water or whatever. It's kind of a little bit like that, but
he's a veteran. He might know how to, keep quiet until the last minute. He's like Randy Orton. He'll RKO you out of nowhere.
That's a great call.
This dragon was taking a nap 12 minutes prior.
I know we texted about that scene, Maniac, but the zoom in on the dragon's face and like the sigh and the leaves and the grass.
The exhale was fucking awesome. The exhale, whoever digitally did the CGI for the exhale, you're like my favorite person ever, because it was just totally like nap vibe. Like, oh, like I don't have to get fucking up yet, and I'm like tired. Like fuck. But yeah, so Maylease, Rhaenys got. What did you think of? I mean, first off, fucking brutal death. More brutal. What do you think of this death? Better or worse than Lucerys? Lucerys is just gone instantly. Didn't see it coming. You got the didn't see it coming here, but you had like 15 seconds just of like agonizing pain as like Maylease gets like basically choked to death, like slash like neck burned.
I think this was worse. I think she had like some time in the air to like think about the mistake she had just made. She was like, I could have just flown away probably. And then you're also like falling. Like you, not only are you thinking about it in the air, watching your dragon get chomped on, but you also have some time to think on your way down as well, which is pretty brutal. I think this was worse.
So I think she looked like she was like kind of at peace almost, honestly. Like she didn't really have it. Like she was kind of like, I've done everything I can. This, this whole battle for the throne.
I don't know what the fuck this is. This Kendrick Perkins on the Thunder. Dude, I'm crying, bro.
Look at him go. Oh my God.
Bro, this is just completely
random.
Dude, Vhagar without ambushes, bro. I'm telling you, this show might have the best memes that I've ever seen. So they make it a lot more fun to the show. But oh my God, dude, unbelievable. But yeah,
the moment where Maylease and Rhaenys, share a look with each other while Maylease is basically getting her head cut off, that is tear-inducing.
Fucking brutal, and I think there's something in the lore that like they like feel a connection when one or the other like dies, and like so they kind of like felt in that moment too. Crazy chaos. What do you got?
Speaking of the lore, what do you guys think about the small differences? Those of you who have read the books or know of the details of the original story, where originally it occurred at night, not during the day. The Lord of Rook's Rest was waiting for a few days for help from Rhaenys before it finally came. Rhaenys was supposedly burnt instead of just falling from the sky. So a few different choices, and the fact that they showed that Aegon wasn't supposed to be a part of this battle. It wasn't a two dragon trap. It was just supposed to be Vhagar.
Truthfully, my knee-jerk reaction to every change you just made, I'm all for it. The last time they did a battle at night, I couldn't see what was going on, and I wanted to see the dragons fighting in this one, so I'm all for that. The Rhaenys thing, I think her not waiting to come makes her more heroic, makes a little. And I get it. Like the whole thing about the GRRM verse is that there are no real heroes. Like there are like faults to everything. Everything is like gray. There's no moral ground. But yeah, I like it. I liked her being more of a hero riding in. I think that was a good send-off for her character too, especially like giving her vibe the last, season and a half. But yeah, from what you just told me, I like the changes. I don't know what you guys thought.
I tend to agree. I also think it might have been easier just to make this scene look as sick as it did, having it in the daytime. So maybe, just cinematography, all that goes into the daytime decision. And then, so you're saying that Aegon was informed on this and he was supposed to ride in with Aemond. It wasn't like a secret attack in the books.
Yeah, I mean, it was a secret attack, but there was no indication, at least as I recall, that Aegon was a surprise to even his own army. that he was supposed.
Gotcha.
It was supposed to be a 2-dragon, surprise attack
Interesting.
whenever Rhaenyra sent one of her own dragons.
Interesting.
HBO loves taking like a sentence from George R.R. Martin and just making it like the fucking wildest thing ever. Like Renly wasn't overtly like gay in the books. Like they said he was fruity or whatever. And then like he's just like the gayest dude. Like they love turning it up like a trillion times. And that's exactly what they did here with this event. I thought, speaking of lore, by the way, wasn't there? Oh, well, no, I won't get into lore. But my question first to all of you as we wrap up here on What's Trainwreck Watching. Does anyone think Aegon is dead?
No.
Okay. So I'm saying we can all have an honest discussion. Is he a vegetable?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. There's no way he can be good for a long time. That's for sure.
It's ironic because, Alicent was basically telling him to do nothing. And that's basically all he's going to be doing for a while is nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, that is all he's going to be doing for nothing. With that said, speaking of the book notes, I guess in the books, he got burned so bad that his armor burned into his flesh. So, got that to look forward to.
Aegon the Conqueror's armor.
So are we getting like a Anakin Skywalker look, Darth Vader look from Aegon next episode, maybe?
Oh, that Aegon situation is going to be something for sure. But speaking of situations, we love that you're following our situation here on What's Trainwreck Watching. Thank you for following each week. Make sure you can follow along, obviously, on all the typical platforms, SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple, and more. And of course, make sure to go check out Batavia Downs, the region's premier entertainment destination, because this isn't the show about next week's review. This isn't the show about last week's blog post. This is about What's Trainwreck Watching. But also remember, whether you're Team Black or Team Green, we wish you good fortune in the wars to come. Good night now.